They called her the last choice, the woman nobody noticed, the woman nobody fought for, the woman who stood at the end of the line after every other bride had been chosen, every other promise had been made, and every other dream had disappeared. But the people of Willow Creek made one mistake. They judged Clara Whitmore by what she had lost instead of what she carried inside. Because the quiet woman who arrived in the frontier town with a worn suitcase and a broken past was about to become the only woman a wealthy cowboy would ever choose. Not because she was the richest, not because she had the finest dress, but because she was the only person brave enough to see the lonely man behind the legend. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Meaningful Horizons, because here we bring you powerful Old West stories filled with emotion, courage, and unexpected twists. The year was 1878. Beyond the endless golden plains of Montana Territory stood a ranch that people spoke about like a legend, the Hayes Ranch. Thousands of acres of land stretched beneath the mountains. Hundreds of cattle moved across the fields, and at the center of it all stood Samuel Hayes, a cowboy whose name was respected from one town to another. People believed Samuel had everything: money, power, a successful ranch. But they never saw the empty chair beside him at dinner. They never saw the untouched letters hidden in his desk. And they never saw the loneliness that followed him after the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Samuel Hayes had built an empire, but he had failed to build a home. After years of refusing every marriage proposal, rumors spread across the frontier that Samuel was finally ready to choose a bride. Suddenly, every family in Willow Creek wanted their daughter to become Mrs. Hayes. Women arrived wearing expensive dresses. Families brought gifts. Everyone wanted the name, the ranch, and the security that came with Samuel Hayes. Everyone except Clara Whitmore. Clara was not searching for wealth. She was searching for a place where she belonged. 3 months earlier, she had arrived in Willow Creek with nothing except a small suitcase, her mother's old journal, and a photograph that was beginning to fade. The job she was promised never existed. The people who promised to help her disappeared. And slowly, the town decided she was someone who did not matter. She worked wherever she could. She repaired clothing. She helped sick neighbors. She cooked meals for families who could barely afford food. Yet, when people talked about possible brides for Samuel Hayes, nobody mentioned Clara. She was invisible, until the night Mrs. Parker changed everything. The elderly woman found Clara sitting alone outside her small rented room. "You're going to the Hayes gathering tomorrow?" Mrs. Parker said. Clara looked confused. "No, I'm not." "Why?" "Because women like me don't get chosen." Mrs. Parker looked at her carefully. "Maybe that is because the right person hasn't looked closely enough." The next evening, Clara entered the Hayes Ranch. The room was exactly what she expected. Beautiful, expensive, and filled with people who believed they were better than her. Whispers followed her immediately. "That's her. She came here? She actually thinks Samuel would choose someone like that." Clara heard every word, but she stayed. Samuel noticed, not because she was trying to impress him, because she wasn't. While other women surrounded him with compliments, Clara quietly stepped away when she saw a young ranch worker struggling with a heavy box. She helped him without thinking, without looking around to see who was watching. And that was the first moment Samuel truly saw her. Later that night, he found her standing near the edge of the property, looking at the endless fields. "You don't seem interested in becoming the richest woman in the territory," Samuel said. Clara smiled slightly. "I don't think that's what makes someone happy." Samuel was surprised. "Then what does?" She looked across the dark fields, knowing that somewhere in this world, someone would notice if you were gone. For a moment Samuel had no answer, because those words described his own life. But before he could say anything, a gunshot echoed from the valley. The entire ranch went silent. Riders appeared near the fence line. Someone had attacked one of the ranch workers and left behind a warning. A message carved into a wooden post: "Hayes Ranch will belong to us soon." Samuel immediately knew who was behind it. Henry Caldwell, the most powerful businessman in the territory. A man who had tried for years to buy the Hayes Ranch and failed. But this time, Henry was not trying to buy it, he was trying to take it. Over the next few days, strange things began happening. Cattle disappeared, fences were destroyed, important records went missing, someone trying to break Samuel from the inside. Then came the discovery that shocked everyone. A hidden document was found inside Clara's room, a document connected to the land dispute. The town turned against her instantly. The same people who never noticed Clara now had a reason to hate her. Samuel walked toward her door as the entire town waited. Everyone expected him to send her away. Everyone expected him to believe the rumors. But Samuel looked at Clara's frightened eyes and remembered something. The night they met. The way she helped someone who could give her nothing in return. The way she never once asked for his money. And for the first time, Samuel realized something. The woman everyone called the last choice might be the only person he could trust. But before Samuel could uncover the truth, Clara whispered something that changed everything. "I know who put that document in my room." Samuel froze. "Who?" Clara looked toward the dark road leading out of town, and the name she spoke was the last names Samuel ever expected to hear, his own brother. For a moment, Samuel Hayes forgot how to breathe. The name Clara whispered did not make sense. His brother. A man who had been gone for years. A man Samuel believed was lost forever. The entire town thought Clara was lying. They believed she had invented a story to escape blame. But Samuel saw something in her eyes that stopped him from walking away. Fear. Not the fear of being caught. The fear of knowing a truth that could destroy everything. "Tell me everything," Samuel said quietly. Clara opened her mother's old journal and placed it on the table. Inside were pages filled with notes, names, and dates. For years, Clara had carried it without understanding why her mother insisted she never lose it. One name appeared again and again. Thomas Hayes, Samuel's younger brother. Years ago, Thomas had disappeared after a disagreement with Samuel's father. Everyone believed he had left the territory and never returned. Samuel had spent years wondering what happened to him. But Clara's journal revealed another story. Thomas had discovered that Henry Caldwell was secretly using illegal methods to steal land from struggling families across the frontier. When Thomas tried to expose him, Henry destroyed his reputation and forced him to disappear. Before leaving, Thomas had trusted Clara's mother with the evidence. Evidence that could bring Henry down, and now, years later, Henry was searching for it. Samuel stared at the journal in disbelief. The woman everyone called a stranger had been carrying the truth about his family all along. But there was one question he needed answered. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Clara lowered her eyes. "Because I didn't know who I could trust." Samuel understood those words, because for years he had felt the same way. The next morning, Samuel and Clara rode together to search for the remaining evidence. For the first time, they were no longer a wealthy cowboy and a forgotten woman. They were partners. As they traveled across the open plains, Samuel discovered things about Clara nobody in Willow Creek knew. She was not fragile. She was not helpless. She had survived years of hardship without losing her kindness. When they stopped near an old abandoned cabin, Clara found a hidden box beneath the floorboards. Inside was the final proof Henry needed to be stopped. But before they could return, they heard horses approaching. Henry Caldwell's men had found them. The two were surrounded. Henry stepped forward with a cold smile. "I always wondered where that evidence disappeared," he said. "I never imagined it would end up with a woman nobody even noticed." Clara stood beside Samuel. Henry laughed. "You really think this cowboy will choose you over everything he built?" Samuel looked at Clara, then he looked back at Henry. "You still don't understand." Henry frowned. "She has nothing." Samuel shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. She has the one thing money can never buy. Courage." The confrontation ended with Henry's plan being exposed. The evidence Clara carried proved years of fraud and betrayal. The sheriff arrested Henry, and the truth finally reached every corner of Willow Creek. But the biggest surprise came after. The town that once rejected Clara had no choice but to admit they were wrong. The same people who whispered about her now thanked her. The same people who called her the last choice now understood she had been the only person strong enough to save them. Weeks later, the Hayes Ranch began to change. The empty halls felt alive. The workers smiled more. The house that once felt like a monument to loneliness finally became a home. And Samuel Hayes changed too. He no longer spent evenings staring at old memories. He spent them listening to Clara's stories. He no longer believed happiness was something he had lost. He realized it was something he had finally found. One evening beneath the same sunset where they first spoke, Samuel held Clara's hand. "I spent my whole life believing I needed someone who could stand beside my name," he said. Clara smiled. "And now?" Samuel looked at her. "Now I know I needed someone who could stand beside my heart." For the first time in her life, Clara was not someone waiting to be chosen. She was someone who had already been chosen. Not because she had the most money. Not because she had the most beautiful dress. But because she was the only person who saw Samuel Hayes as a man, not a wealthy cowboy. Their wedding became one of the most remembered events in Willow Creek. People came from miles away to see the woman nobody wanted become the woman everyone respected. And years later, when people told the story of the Hayes Ranch, they never started with Samuel's wealth. They started with Clara, the woman who arrived with nothing, the woman they ignored, the woman they called the last choice. Because sometimes the greatest treasures in life are the ones people are too blind to recognize. And sometimes the person everyone leaves behind becomes the person who changes everything. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Meaningful Horizons for more unforgettable Old West stories filled with emotion, courage, and hope. Because in the frontier, legends were not always born from guns and gold. Sometimes they were born from a single choice, and Samuel Hayes chose her.